Hello everyone, today we're finally going to be taking a look at object-oriented programming in Ruby. Now that sounds scary, but it's really not that bad. All that object-oriented programming means is rather than thinking about things in terms of variables or functions, I want you to think about different objects that you might use to accomplish your goal. And the way that I personally preferred when I was first starting off learning these things was I would think about it from the perspective of video games. So what we could do is we could have something like player health. We could set that equal to 100. We could set a player damage equal to 10. We could give the player a level equal to, 1, right? And then we could do like an enemy health equal to 100. You get the idea. But what we're really doing here with the player is we're sort of considering all of the attributes a player might have, all of the things that a player might need. So let's say, for example, in a game like Minecraft, you might have like the Steve walking around. He might have like a jump height. He might have an experience level. But all of those things are just inherent to him, so it makes a lot more sense if instead of using player health and player damage and player level, we were to just create one object that sort of encapsulated all of this stuff so that anytime we needed to get the player's level, we could just do something like player.level instead of having to figure out where in the player or where the player health variable name is. We could just go over here to like a player class where we have all of these things inside of it. So let's take a look at how we can do that. We're going to start by creating a file. We'll say new file, and we'll just call this player.rb. And to create an object, the first thing we need is like a class blueprint. So you can consider objects as like instances of a class. So you have a class, we'll call this player. And just like with our functions, we have the keyword here, it's class instead of def. And then we'll capitalize the P in player just because we like making things nice to read. In other languages, you have something called a constructor. In Ruby, you're going to have a initialize method instead, right? So for this, it's just going to be a function, but you might hear me use the word method here as opposed to function. Generally, I consider functions that are inside of a class to be methods. It's the exact same thing, except one is inside of the object or the class and a function isn't. But you could still call it a function. There's just people that'll be salty if you use one instead of the other. But at the end of the day, who cares what they're upset about, right? It's always going to be something. But this is just a function at the end of the day. So let's pass in a couple things. Like we had those arguments before, those parameters that we were using for our functions. Let's do something similar here. For the player, if we look back over here, if I undo this, we had a health. We had the damage and we had the level. We'll just do all three. So let's just start by saying the player has some health. They have some, what was the second one? Damage. And then they have a level. And then we can come down here inside of this and we can declare these. Now we don't want to use regular variables like we were using before, where we had like health equals health. We want to use something called an instance variable. An instance variable is going to be a little bit different than a regular variable. So this one right here, this health, remember if we had like another function here that was like def print my health, if we had something like this and we wanted to print our health, we can't access this health in this function, or sorry, we can't access this health in this function. Because remember, as soon as we leave this function, all the variables inside of it kind of just go away unless we actually return them. And you'll see we don't have like a return health down here, right? We're not doing this. So there's no way for us to access it. But we can cheat a little bit by using a instance variable, which is going to be this @health. And this is going to be only usable inside of the player, but it's going to be usable in other functions in this player class. So anytime you want to have a variable that you can use in your class, but maybe not outside of it, just put an @ symbol in front of it. It's that easy in Ruby. It's a little bit trickier in other languages, but you get the idea. Now that we have this, let's go ahead and let's do the same thing for our damage and for our level. So we're passing these in when we create this, and we'll talk about creating this in a second. And then down here, when we want to print this health, we can print at health instead. And then we can do something similar for print my damage, and we can print my level, right? So that's our class right here. Very basic stuff. Let's go ahead and let's come over to our main method. Let's get rid of this stuff and let's create this player. So the first thing we have to do is we have to import the player. I think we've covered importing before, but for this we can use a require relative for the player, and then we can come down here and we can create a new player. To do this, all we have to do is say player equals, and then we can say player.new, and then we have to pass in some numbers. Let's give them 100 health, we'll give them 50 damage, and we'll set them to level 1. Let's then go ahead and print the player's health by calling player.printMyHealth. You can think of this with the parentheses, so it's a bit more clear that we're using a function here. So all we're really doing here is we're creating one player. But again, in a game like Minecraft, where you might have like a multiplayer option, like right here, we can have 69 people on a server. There's going to be 69 players. So then we would have to go through here and create like a player 2. So we could say player 2, or we could even just name this one Dean. So Dean is a player with, I don't know, 120 health, 60 damage, and he's level 2. So let's go ahead and let's print my health, or print the player's health, and then let's print Dean's health. We'll come down here, we'll say Dean.printMyHealth. If we now run this by doing ruby main.rb inside of this folder, you can see the first player right here has 100 health, and the second player, which is Dean, but we're not printing out a name, has 120 health. So let's go ahead and let's add a name here. We can do that by just adding a name to our initializer. We can then say @name equals name. And then down here, we can do print my name, and then we can print that @name. Let's come back over to our main. We'll give this first one a name of, I don't know, John Doe. And then we can give the second one a name of, I don't know, let's just say Dean for now. Now we can come down here, and when we print my health or do something else, we can start by saying player.print. And if I just type .print, you can see these things pop up here where it tries to tell me what I should, autocomplete with. And this is where having these objects are nice. It's all hidden away in another file, but we get these helpers where it's already aware of which functions are available to us, and then we can just click on one of these. We can do the same thing down here, print my name for Dean, and now let's go ahead and let's run this again. If we run this, we can see my name is John Doe, my health is 100. And we can see my name is Dean, my health is 120. You can think of this as a slightly better way, I guess, of handling this data than if we were to, create a Dean name, a Dean health, a Dean damage, a Dean level, and then a player name, a player health, a player damage, a player level, and then having to create these print functions every time. You can see how just with 2 people, we already have a bunch of stuff available to us that we would have to do like multiple times. So now picture, again, if you had like a multiplayer server like this, where you have like 100 people on, it's gonna take a long time to code all of that. And it's even worse if you go through here and you're like, all right, actually everyone now needs to have like 110 health when they start. So then you got to go through here and you got to make sure, okay, this guy's got 110, this guy's got 130. That's fine. But if it's complex math, then in here, when you're printing off like your health, so maybe we go back and then we say, all right, they need to have 10 more health. So let's only print off our health plus 10. Now you have to go through each of these like player health 1 and Dean health 1 functions and change all of those datas instead of just changing it in like one place, which is where the classes and the objects are sort of helpful. And this is also going to be used even more in like game design than traditional programming, because traditional programming does use functions in other areas because there are like functional programming languages that you work in. But when it comes to like games and stuff, you're largely just going to be using classes and objects because it's an easier way to think about it. I mean, again, if we come back over here and we just take a look at this screen, you can already piece together, okay, well, there's probably like a block class, this grass block, and that tells you that each block has like a type, right? Like a grass type or a sand type or a sandstone type. And then maybe like there's a different type of block called water that flows. Maybe sand is like a block that falls, so it's a slightly different type of block. But imagine if for each of these blocks you had to type out, you know, all of the stuff for that block's logic instead of just having everything sort of be a block class where most of your logic is in there. That's a simplification of how Minecraft does it. They have, they have a whole mess of code that they work with. They don't just have like small little snippets like this, but you get the idea. I think this is a good stopping point because this is just a very simple example. I think in most other tutorials, they're generally going to work with like cars or animals for your first touch at object-oriented programming, as they call it. But again, all you really want to think about is the world around me. I can orient towards objects to figure out, okay, well, there's a phone object or there's a water bottle object. Maybe the water bottle has a name or the phone has a brand or something. That's pretty much all we're talking about when we say object-oriented programming, is we try and put things into objects as much as possible. So for now, I'm going to leave you here, and then we'll follow this up by taking a look at some other ways where we can use these objects, and then we'll take a look at some actual practical applications of them, as opposed to just printing off our name and our health. But as a exercise for the viewer, maybe try printing off the damage or printing off your level. See if you can do that without me explicitly writing the code for you. If you need help with that, if you can't figure it out, I would suggest going down into the video description. I have all of the code available on GitHub. You can just click on the link and you can then take a look at how I did it. But for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.